You're listening to Loughy Savoca, a fantasy football podcast. Dave Loughran, Matt Savoca. What's good, brother? How we feeling? Episode 6 today.
Episode 6. We are marching closer and closer to the start of the preseason. Training camps have begun. The signal and noise ratio has swiftly turned towards the noise. It is officially football season. Happy to be here. Episode 6. What's up, man?
Shit, I'm going to be doing some preseason betting content over on the Odd Shopper channel, which oddly enough, I'm very excited about.
The descent into degeneracy has like a new filled energy this year with the amount of sports books that have kind of signed on, the states that now have sports betting legal. It's just like different ways to get our fix. And it's the same info, right? It's the same stats. I'm equally excited to get going here.
They have real tight limits on that stuff. Like you can't just rip off 5,000 on the Raiders money line. But the reason they do that is because there actually is an edge in preseason betting. And I was never really I was always skeptical about that. But then the more you do it and you look into it and by the time they're posting the lines, you see how much some of them move. You can't help but look at it and go, all right, maybe there's something here, you know?
Absolutely. And not to mention the fact that it really helps when you have people as plugged in as Matt Kajeski, who works on our preseason projections for the NFL. And man, it is a wild, wild situation, especially since they moved from 4 games to 3 games, because now teams utilize the preseason differently. It used to be kind of rhythmic, where like the 3rd game was where you knew the starters would play the most, and then they'd sit in the second half. Now some teams completely sit out their stars in the preseason. Actually, that's already started in training camp. I saw the Lions are being methodical with DeAndre Swift's training camp snaps. That actually bodes well, I think, but maybe not for his bell cow potential in 2022. No?
Oh, a little tease there. Nice work. We're talking risky players today. One of my favorite topics, because I think, your leagues can be won and lost on this for sure. It's simple when you think about it. There are guys that have red flags. There's a lot of guys that's just the unknown quantity. You don't so often you're looking at some of these players and you go, okay, they're risky because we don't know. Not always because of injury or because of, like Antonio Brown going full out Antonio Brown, but just because there's a lot of factors that you can't quantify, that you can try and predict, you can try and project for, but they aren't there until you see what happens in the season. And coach speak can only take you so far, dude.
Right. And I think the other part of this is, I'm going to throw a big stats word for everyone, but variance, right? It's the variance of scores and us separating that natural variance of fantasy scores on a week-to-week basis from the risk factors that go into projecting a players. When we dig into how many targets, how many snaps, how many rushes are these players going to get, we start to see these levels of uncertainty when you start to break that down. That's different than the fact that we know that touchdowns vary from week to week, that catch rates vary from week to week, that fantasy production varies from week to week. That's natural. That's part of the game. This is about us being uncertain about situations, about teams, and about players' roles within them. So I think it's a pretty important topic, especially as we get going here. You're going to hear a lot of noise out of training camp soon enough.
I've got a wild hot take for you as well. And I'm not just doing it, to be absurd, because that seems to be just the way people do things. On Twitter, everyone's either a fantasy football expert or they become a spiritual guide and a life coach these days.
Let me tell you about the 10 ways to improve your business because my DFS lineup did well one Sunday.
Right. Or it's like, hey, drink water in the morning. Yeah, I know. Work out. Yeah, of course. Like, I don't need you to tell me that stuff. I'll give you one. Don't be lazy. And if you want to be lazy, fine, go for it. But like not being lazy, it helps a lot. And we all struggle with it. But we're going early rounds, middle rounds, and late rounds. I've got one. You didn't throw it in here, but I'm going to toss it to you. And you probably know where I'm going. I actually did a video about it not long ago. Let's kick it off, though, with DeAndre Swift. You already kind of teased that at the top of the show. This is someone where you're talking risk in the sense of workload? Are you talking risk in the sense of production, or are you talking risk in the sense of injury?
This is tough because I think you could say he's got yellow flags in all 3 categories, right? Because he was
They
injured.
literally told him, I'm sorry. They literally told him this earlier in the summer, you need to be able to decipher the difference between hurt and injured. That's not good.
No, that's not a great feeling. I think they have. So let's unpack it here. They have incredibly high hopes for the production of DAndre Swift within this offense. They think that the talent is as good as any running back in the NFL. That's why you hear them saying we're talking about limiting his snaps here in July and August, because they don't matter. They want it to matter later in the season. But the bottom line is he has been hurt a ton early in his career. They have needed to rely on other players in the backfield. Jamal Williams had 14 opportunities per game to end the season last year, this last 6 games. He was averaging over 80 total yards per game. So the risk is not only because of injury, because it's there for him like it is for any running back, but it's also, do they just not trust him? Does Dan Campbell and this offensive regime just not trust him to get the 20 or so opportunities per game that we need from our second round pick for them to really pay off? Because we don't think the touchdowns are going to be there in abundance for the Lions offense. We think they're better than they were in previous years, but we're not expecting them to be some high flying touchdown scoring offense. That means you need the snaps, you need the routes, you need the pass catching for DAndre Swift. I think he does have like an Eckler-light role as his most likely outcome here, but you can't say that like Jamal Williams goes completely away and you can guarantee it at this point.
Jamal Williams, look, Campbell loves Jamal Williams. We know that. But I might have a slightly less trepidation when it comes to drafting DAndre Swift than you do. One of the biggest reasons, though, is because the offensive line should look markedly better than it did last year. PFF has them ranked third. Granted, it's just, one person ranking them. But when you look at the health, you look at the amount of first rounders on this team, you look at the guys that are no longer injured, this should be a good offensive line. PFF has them ranked third, behind only the Philadelphia Eagles and the Cleveland Browns.
Wow.
That says a lot, right?
Yeah.
And you and I talk about this all the time. And I firmly believe this: as the offensive line goes, the offense goes. And I don't think there's really any argument to that. Of course, you can have running quarterbacks. You can just have running backs that can catch passes out of the backfield and are super elusive. But generally speaking, if you have a good offensive line, your team's going to look a whole lot better. So the 20 touches a game, that seems unlikely, but receptions are worth more than carries. He's very good in open space. He's one of the guys that I'm not champing at the bit to get to, right, where he's being drafted. And we can talk about some other guys that I think are riskier in that range. But I'm also not maybe as worried as you are about DAndre Swift.
I think that's fair, right? And also, we're going to talk about this in a league-by-league basis. So many leagues, I have so many friends that say, well, my league, people are just racing for their second running back as fast as they can in the second round. I don't know what to tell you. At a certain point in the second round, this might look like the most appealing option here. Go for it, right? Because there is league-winning upside here as well as a decent opportunity floor because of the targets he gets. But the play caller change happened midseason for the Lions, and after that, we didn't see those monster target totals that we saw earlier in the year. His highest target total after week 8 last year was 6. So I just want more than that in terms of floor from my second round pick. If you told me that DAndre Swift was that pick you needed to win leagues, I get how that happens. I just don't know if that is really that close to likely. Is that fair?
Yeah, it's very fair. I think for me, what it comes down to is just that I think Aaron Jones is riskier, and he's being drafted, right around the same place. I know you and I differ dramatically on Saquon Barkley, and I think all of your points too are reasonable on Barkley. I'm understand. Even when I did that video the other day, I noticed you commented on it. We went back and forth a little bit. Everything you said is reasonable, but I pointed all of that out in the video too. Like, hey, yeah. I get it. There's nobody behind him. There's literally Kenny Brightwell, Matt Breida.
Matt Breida's there. Like, I think Eli Penny might still be there. Like,
right. No cast-offs and misfits, right? No disrespect to them as humans, but in terms of football, Saquon Barkley is going to be getting the lion's share of opportunities. But this dude has missed 21 games over his last 3 seasons. The injuries are significant. The offensive line should be better. I mean, it can't be worse than last year, which is good. Literally can't be. You can't be worse than the offensive line for the New York Giants last year. But will they be even league average? Of course, you've got the coaching regime, the change where Joe Judge is out, and that's significant. And I think that's where you mostly, not to put words in your mouth, are feeling confident that Saquon Barkley can get back to, rookie form, because we haven't seen him there in a pretty long time.
Yeah, that's actually a good point. If this were Gettleman and Joe Judge once again, and it was just Saquon Barkley coming back from injury, I'm not sure I would be as high on him. I think these are two synergistic factors, right? You had a complete cleaning of house. You also, just to use that word again, have synergy between that front office and the new coach and Brian Dable, which is a lot more than you can say about a lot of franchise. Now, the GM and the coach are on the same page for one draft. We don't know if they can turn it around. They still have an inherited quarterback in Daniel Jones. But the other part about this is Saquon Barkley had muscle atrophy because of his injuries, his ACL injuries last year. He could not train normally. He's looking more like Saquads in training camp this year. So I do think that is a huge factor for NFL players, being able to have somewhat normal off seasons, especially when you're installing a new, more pass-oriented, more modern offense. I just think there's a lot going for him, to the point where I'm taking him out of the risky category, because he's risky in the sense that all bell cow running backs are risky. That's not really what I'm saying. If he gets injured here and someone starts to call him injury prone, these are just facts. It's annoying because he looks, on paper like one of the most athletic, best profiles we've ever seen coming out of college. But at a certain point, you got to be on the field in order to realize that potential. He's my favorite second round pick, bottom line, and I'll take him in a running back heavy draft like 201. Happy to do it. But I agree. The level of risk for him is different, and there's different layers of it, right? Compared to players like Swift or Jones, where they could be healthy, have the offense perform the way we think they're going to perform, and the opportunity just may not be there.
Right. Now, how do you feel about a little thought experiment here? Want to get into the weeds a little bit? All right.
Yeah.
And before we do, hit the thumbs up if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening in podcast form, subscribe to the podcast. Leave us a glowing review. It'd be greatly appreciated. Even if you don't mean it, it helps us a lot. Thank you, guys. All right. Who do you think has the better offense this year? And stipulate this with, do you think they'll be marginally better, much better, New York Jets or New York Giants?
I'm going to go with the Giants.
Okay.
Because they're just similar personnel, and now you're just installing better systems, right?
Who do you think has the better offensive line?
Jets, 100%.
Okay. That offensive line, they moved Becton to right tackle because George Fant had such a good year, and now he's at left tackle. You have Elijah Vera Tucker, and then they brought in Laken Tomlinson, former Pro Bowler from was it the Niners, right? So This could be a very good offensive line. All right, let's take it a step further. Which quarterback passing game has a higher ceiling this year, the Jets or the Giants?
It's actually the Giants again, because bottom line, and I'm looking at the stats, I think that it's not even that. I have high hopes for Elijah Moore and Garrett Wilson eventually, but Zach Wilson has not shown the ability to even produce 3 total touchdowns in a game with any kind of consistency. At the very least, Daniel Jones has spike weeks, and we've seen it happen. And, his deep ball accuracy was actually pretty darn good. He doesn't throw deep that often. He was 31st in total air yards among quarterback, and in air yards per attempt, he was 26th in the NFL. But his deep ball accuracy rating was solid. Play action accuracy rating, solid. I think there's still hope for Daniel Jones. And what's good about the way that this offense is structured on the Giants, everything else is in enough of a good place where you'll know this year whether you need to replace the quarterback. That's actually a decent place for a new front office and coaching staff to be. We just don't know how it'll feel in 2022.
All right, final question. Who would you rather have, Barkley in the second or Breece Hall in the fourth?
It's Barkley in the second, but I think I'm coming around on Breece Hall.
I'm coming around on Breece Hall too, man. I'm really coming around on Breece Hall.
And
He's so good.
That's what we said, right? The chances of, if there is a Jonathan Taylor in this draft class, the probability of it being Breece Hall compared to anybody else is astronomically high, right?
He's he's unicorn-esque in the sense that his footwork is amazing. He is elusive. He has surprising breakaway speed. He's super patient behind the line. Like everything you would want, right? In a player, in a running back, Breece Hall has it. And the more I look in there, the more I look at what to expect, the more I'm coming around. I try, and I know you're the same way. Both of us are very often agree on this. We try to temper expectations when it comes to rookie running backs because people get overly excited. In my opinion, they oftentimes overreact. I'm not talking about Saquon Barkley going in the top. Was it 5? What he drafted 4 overall or something?
I think 4th overall.
Fourth overall. I'm not talking about those guys or like the Ezekiel Elliott's early in the
second
career.
Overall.
Where you just know that they're going to get used until the wheels fall off. But Breece Hall is interesting to me because this is where it gets fun. If Michael Carter wasn't in New York, who's drafted first, Saquon Barkley or Breece Hall? Think about that.
Breece Hall shouldn't leave the 3rd if that's the case. If there was no Michael Carter, it's funny because
I think he'd be a late second.
I think he'd be a late second round pick. And it's funny because this 204 range, this top 5 pick in the second round has become almost its own little NFL draft tier. We saw Nick Chubb go in this spot, and I actually think that's a really interesting comp for Breece Hall. Nick Chubb came into the similar situation, a Browns team that had done nothing but lose for years on end, looking at a possible quarterback change. He was actually 3rd on the depth chart, but the team had just spent early top 5 second round draft capital on him. Despite them having other options there, eventually Nick Chubb just ripped this backfield from everybody else. And I think that's in the cards here. The one thing, I am so far from a college film grinder, but I will say when he burst through holes, I didn't see the same Barkley-esque breakaway speed or Nick Chubb-esque breakaway speed, but his elusiveness and patience, and he tested fantastically well. So maybe my eyes are deceiving me because the numbers look like they're there.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you look at the speed score, the burst score, the 40-yard, everything. I don't know. I'm just excited about it. And the reason I wanted to have this conversation is because I think any rookie on a bad or let's say unproven offense like the Jets is risky, right? Inherently risky.
100%.
But what if we're just way wrong on Michael Carter? What if LaFleur and Robert Saleh are just blowing smoke up our asses and Michael Carter's not going to be used that often? Like, this guy is a 4th round pick. Okay. They didn't draft him in the 2nd round last year. If Breece Hall really is as good as I think he is, there's no way he's splitting snaps with Michael Carter and Michael Carter is getting the majority. Go watch just some highlights. Go watch some highlights of some of these absurd circus grabs that Breece Hall has made. Dude can do it all. So in the event that Michael Carter really is only like a 20, 30% snap share guy, Breece Hall is going to dominate just on volume alone because of the offensive line and because of his talent. Am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong, but there is this fundamental concern of you're just picking up 60% of the backfield opportunities on the Jets. Like, what am I doing here?
Sure.
But again, talent wins out in these situations. I mean, I think the Nick Chubb example is perfect here because Baker Mayfield was a rookie that year. They still were starting Tyrod Taylor. And I remember there was a game where Nick Chubb had 3 carries, and I think one of them was a 97-yard rushing touchdown.
Yeah.
These players
you're right.
literally burst onto the scene when they happen. We can't guarantee that for any prospect, but there's a lot of green flags here. Hey, we've been talking all show long about Underdog Fantasy, truly the best place to play best ball fantasy football this season. They've got so many great tournaments over there. The Best Ball Mania 3 tournament, just $25 to entry, $2 million to first place, $1 million to the regular season champion, and second place in the playoffs as well. They've had puppy tournaments all summer long with just a $5 entry. And promo code Stokastic can get you a ton of free stuff right now. First of all, you can double your first deposit up to $100, and we are sweetening the deal over at Stokastic.com. When you sign up over at Underdog, use that promo code Stokastic. You can also get a free access to our Stokastic Best Ball and Fantasy Football Draft Kit. We've got projections, rankings, expert consensus rankings, values, sleepers, busts, breakout. We got everything for you. Check it out, Underdog Fantasy, promo code Stokastic.
Last year, 8 of the top 20 running backs were on sub 500 teams. 2 years ago, I think it was 4 of the top 10 were on 500 teams or worse. So it can happen. James Robinson was the RB6 2 years ago, right? As an undrafted rookie. It can happen. All I'm saying is Breece Hall's way better than all of those guys.
Yeah.
So he's risky. But if it comes to me in the 4th round, let's say you have one running back, right? Let's say you have one running back and you're looking for a second. If I'm getting Breece Hall as my RB2, I promise you I'm very, very okay with that.
Okay, how about Breece Hall or Cam Akers in the 4th?
Unquestionably Breece Hall.
Okay.
I just think he's a significantly better talent than Cam Akers.
I have them right next to each other. And
who would you rather have, Ezekiel Elliott or Breece Hall?
Breece Hall.
Tony Pollard's damn good, man. You want to talk about risky? Ezekiel Elliott, even where he's being drafted, in my opinion, is risky. Tony Pollard was among the league lead in almost every advanced metric that you could find last year. Literally. He had 8 more forced missed tackles than Elliott and 140 fewer carries.
I have Tony Pollard inside my top 24 running backs.
Wow. Really?
So I'm mostly drafting best ball right now. And obviously this is more fantasy football oriented show. And I probably wouldn't draft him at running back 24, but this is a player that you just want on a lot of teams. Good football players in the mid rounds are how you find this year's Cooper Kupp. If we told you the exact signals to find this year's league winner, to find this year's Cooper Kupp, it would be easy and we'd all do it. But these are the types of risks you have to take. Tony Pollard, same with A.J. Dillon, especially after the conversation we had. These are the types of players that I sometimes take, especially in best ball, ahead of the players like, say, Josh Jacobs, who on paper looks like they're going to have volume, or your boy Miles Sanders even sometimes, or even Chase Edmonds, who I do like as a player. But again, these are about projecting on certain backfields. We're typically bad about that, and that's why their ADP is low. I'd rather just take the players who are, dare I say, #good.
I'm with you. And Tony Pollard is verifiably, objectively good at football. They also want to line him up as a receiver. So that means you could have Zeke in the backfield and Tony Pollard still out there with opportunities, running routes. He could be very good this year. He could be very good.
They used to have that role in the Dallas offense. Obviously, this is years ago, different coordinators, but like, remember Lance Dunbar? I think we mentioned him on a previous show.
What about Cordell Patterson?
Yeah, they could use this scat back role. And this passing offense needs a 3rd or 4th option, right? How much can you really rely on Jalen Tolbert? James Washington's already hurt in camp. So you got CeeDee Lamb, obviously. Dalton Schultz in the last year of his deal. Somebody else has got to catch passes. There could be a lot of opportunity for Pollard in the passing game.
And he's good at catching passes. So, yeah. I'm excited about him. I really am. I think in the early rounds, we don't need to get into risk when it comes to McCaffrey. Like, you know what the risk is with McCaffrey. He's had some injuries, but if he's healthy, he's ultra talented. And while Baker Mayfield is not, the second coming of Tom Brady, he is still an upgrade from whatever they were trotting out there last year between Darnold and Newton. And then like Derrick Henry, I do want your quick opinion on it. And I will preface this. Once we get into the middle and late rounds, risk is heavily mitigated by where you're drafting players. So it's not nearly as important as it is in these early rounds, where if you miss on guys that have red flags that are risky with a lot of question marks, it takes some rebuilding. It takes some smart moves on the waiver, some wise trades. You miss a guy in the 8th or 9th round, you're not dead at all. Derrick Henry, are you concerned at all coming off of the foot injury, or is it all systems go?
All systems go.
Okay.
Think
about it for a second.
I did. I literally just changed this in the last 24 hours. I moved him to my second overall player in most half PPR and certainly in standard formats because I'm not. This is a freak of nature. This is not a normal person on a normal age curve, and this is not a 40-year-old at the running back position. I think the chances of him slowing down are less than what the public is saying. And the opportunity isn't just absurd. He doesn't quite catch passes like Christian McCaffrey. If both of them are 100% healthy on their respective teams, McCaffrey still is the leader in expected fantasy points based on the usage, but nobody is close to the two of them. And so I'll take my chances with Derrick Henry, especially in the revamped passing game. Instead of taking, you can take Ryan Tannehill in one of his passing options. That's fine, but you're going to have 25 total opportunities, targets plus rushes per game when healthy. Someone was describing, I saw a video of him working out, and it was like, you know those YouTube videos of a moose running at full speed?
Sure.
That is sort of what I feel about Derrick Henry. It's just like, this is not when he does these workouts, these training, it doesn't even look like a person. I have to recalibrate.
Yeah, it's. I'm not sure words can accurately describe it. Not sure the human brain can comprehend it.
And that's what it looks like. And it's
crazy.
Cool. You match it to analytics. PFF has done these studies. His rush expected points added per play goes up based on the amount of rushes he's had in a game because nobody freaking wants to tackle him.
Of course. Nick Chubb's the same way. Yeah.
Let's just take that player who's getting that much work at the very top of the first round.
What would it take for you? I want you to really think about this. What would it take for you? You can wear pads to stand in the secondary, okay? 25 yards back. Derrick Henry, full head of steam, straight into you. You try and tackle him. Flat-footed.
Just once. I'm flat-footed too.
Oh yeah, you don't have you're kind of you're deer in the headlights.
All right. Wow. We talk about risk of ruin. The medical bills may not be worth it, but I'd probably do it for a couple mil. I'd want to approach
that
10
much?
mil. I would need $10 million.
You
yes.
have pads on.
Okay. All right. Well, don't the people who do it for a living get a couple million?
Not for
and
one
still
tackle.
Fail? They still have the same result I'm going to have flat-footed.
Dude, I'll bet you people in the comments right now would be like, I'd do it for a few grand. I bet there's some people out there that take a shot from Derrick Henry for a few grand, for sure.
I would watch that. Just line them up for charity.
Remember Pros versus Joes?
Yeah. Yeah.
Remember that?
Bring it back. Let's go.
Yeah.
Mascot in Green Bay did it with AJ Dillon. Yeah, that was a great video, producer Phil. Yeah. Yeah, that was true. Did you see that at the minor league baseball game?
Yeah. Yeah.
More of that.
Dillon's got some steam to him, but Derrick Henry, holy shit, man, you're in trouble. But no, I think there's a lot of people out there be like, hey, I'll give you $5,000. Just stand in front of him, one tackle. He'll cover any medical bills on top of the $5,000. They do, no doubt.
Oh, they do.
A lot of people, But like I said, once you get into some of these later rounds, the risk isn't the same. J.K. Dobbins, you want to talk about a guy that legitimately scares the shit out of me. J.K. Dobbins is that guy. And the more and more I become fond of drafting Breece Hall in as many drafts as I can, the less and less inclined I am. Not that these two are related. I'm just saying I'm going one way on one guy. The less and less inclined I am to really want to go anywhere near J.K. Dobbins this year.
I respect that. And, part of the difficulty, if I could philosophize about fantasy football for a minute, is we always have like two differing tenets about fantasy football, two general strategy rules that tend to be tugging against each other, right? And one of those is don't chase injuries. You're going to find injuries yourself during the fantasy football season. And we already know that J.K. Dobbins is hurt right now. We don't know what his preseason is going to look like. We don't even know what his availability for week 1 looks like because of the severity of the injury that he suffered last preseason. At the same time, this is the kind of player that I think I'm starting to come around on because we're seeing the necessary dip. So the risk is built into the ADP more and more. This is a player who averaged 6 yards per carry, who's going to have wide open rushing lanes because of the quarterback that he plays with. And in fantasy football leagues where you have an IR slot, it's essentially like grabbing a free extra roster spot. So when you have the talent, the quality of the rushing offense, and the fact that he's essentially giving me that free roster space, I'm starting to come around on J.K. Dobbins, especially in those formats. We're talking about risky players. He has to be mentioned, right? Because there's even opportunity for other running backs to take the rushes that Lamar Jackson doesn't have anyway. So that he could be touch squeezed by multiple players, but the talent is there when healthy.
Yes, I'm a huge fan of J.K. Dobbins. I loved J.K. Dobbins coming into the league. We saw him as I think it was like the RB6 over the final 5 weeks of his rookie season. But let me give you 4 reasons. Four reasons. I'm looking at you. I'm looking at you over here, right? My camera's over here, and it's difficult. But you 4 reasons J.K. Dobbins really scares me, even in the late 5th, early 6th round. One, Lamar Jackson rushing upside. 2, torn ACL. 3, Gus Edwards is a legitimately good running back, also coming off an ACL, but he's never averaged less than 5 yards per attempt in his career. Actually, I have 5. 4, expected touchdown regression. I don't see him scoring as much as he did last year. When you have a rushing quarterback, you also have Gus Edwards. And then 5, specifically for point per reception leagues, this team doesn't pass to their running backs. So if there is touchdown regression, which would make sense, he's not making up for that in the passing game. So how does he get there? Is he limited early on? I don't know. When he's not limited anymore, is it a 60-40 split between him and Gus Edwards, who, it should not be lost on you, signed a contract extension last summer right before he tore his ACL himself. So they like Gus Edwards. Mm-hmm. All of those factors, to me, I look at it and I go, look, J.K. Dobbins is awesome, but I don't know if he's healthy. I don't know if they're ever going to throw to the running backs. I don't know if he'll score as much as he did before. And I don't know how much Gus Edwards is going to get in the backfield.
Yeah. I think that's very fair. And, we should mention that we are officially with J.K. Dobbins in this 5th, 6th round range. We are in the mid-round risk category, and we do play things a little bit differently with early round risk versus mid-round risk. With early round risk, we might make the decision we are completely fading this player. Like they are fundamentally mispriced. With mid-round risk, we're starting to get to the point where that old adage, we don't hate players, we hate ADPs. Because I think my conclusion, despite liking the upside opportunity for J.K. Dobbins, would be, and yet I still don't want him unless he falls below his current ADP. We were talking about all the green flags for a player like Tony Pollard. I think in 2020, pre-injury for Dobbins, you could say a lot of the same things. In true yards per carry on Player Profiler, in the 2020 season, J.K. Dobbins was number 1 in the NFL in yards per touch. He was number 3 in the NFL. He evaded 31% of would-be tacklers. That was top 5 in the NFL. These are the types of players I want to bet on because this is what talent looks like. I don't know what the opportunity will be, but I will believe at a certain point that talent will rise to the top. Lamar Jackson as a rusher isn't going away. That's the only part where he's not going to become some 25 opportunity player. He has to have efficiency to get there.
No question. Look, you and I are on the same page. J.K. Dobbins is awesome when he's healthy, but he's less than a year removed from an ACL. He'll be right over a calendar year when the season starts. You talk about like muscle atrophy with Saquon Barkley. I mean, do we know?
I was just thinking about it. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, do we know that we're getting the same J.K. Dobbins? That's another thing. Fringe 5th, early 6th round pick. It's not like you have to draft him in the 3rd round. He was 3rd round ADP last year before the injury. But I still don't. Here's how I still don't see this necessarily as value. I see it probably where he should be going based on all of the uncertainty. He'd be probably a late 2nd, early 3rd if everything was fine. This is probably where he should be going. I'd like to wait a little bit longer to take J.K. Dobbins.
I'm speculating here, but especially if he's not on the practice field and the news is either silent or not good, I suspect that he starts to fall out of the RB dead zone, like the 9th round, the 8th, 9th round of your own league. Then you grab him. The IR slot is there, right? Then it's a no-brainer.
Sure.
Okay.
Not a question. Not a question. Because that mitigates a lot of the concerns that I have. It's that simple. Like right now, I'd rather just wait and take Miles Sanders, because Miles Sanders, yeah, he's dealt with some ankle injuries, but and like a wrist injury, but these are things. Maybe he's made of paper mache. We'll really find out this year. But he's got an offensive line that is downright scary. I mean, downright scary good. You wouldn't disagree with that. I mean,
PFF had them number 1. They know what they're doing.
Yeah, this offensive line is nuts. And yeah, you got Jalen Hurts, also a rushing quarterback, but Miles Sanders going 18 picks after Dobbins right now. That's the only part to me that seems odd. And I know I think the Eagles will throw more. I do. Mm-hmm. I know you do as well. But I still think they're going to want to run the football on a team that we saw have a ton of success last year. And you could talk about Gainwell or whoever you want, or a Boston Scott, but Miles Sanders is still the guy. Someone else I'll throw out, A.J. Dillon. I think A.J. Dillon's going to have a ton of work. They didn't draft him in the 2nd round and then use him more in the second half of the season, albeit maybe some injuries to Aaron Jones. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of good players going like 1.5 to 2 rounds after Dobbins right now at running back.
Yeah, and I think this is something that we talked about in previous shows this year. This is a unique wrinkle of the 2022 fantasy draft season that I can't say is always true, that this RB2-3 zone, this running back 25 through 35, even running back 40, feels like it's very fruitful, feels like it has a ton of upside. And yeah, we got to discern what our favorites are, but I think there's going to be some natural changeover. There's going to be a lot of different ways that drafts go. And so naturally, some of these players are going to fall. Grab a few of them. A.J. Dillon has that risk, but he also has that league-winning upside. Tony Pollard has that risk. Ezekiel Elliott could be much healthier this year, but he also has that league-winning upside. You grab 2 or 3 of these players, especially when you are basing that strategy off however you played the running back position early in your draft. Because remember, I don't want to make 2 separate points here, but remember, a lot of these strategies we're talking about and these player evaluations are based on what level running back they are on your team. If you grab 2 or 3 running backs early, then a player like Dobbins to stash on your IR, that makes all the sense in the world.
Sure.
If you need 15 touches a game, with the upside of 20, and you're sitting there in the 2nd round with only 1 running back after, using some anchor RB or hero RB strategy, Miles Sanders, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, they got to be on your radar, right? So, there's always nuance here, even when we're talking about just this general category of risky player.
It's a great point. Like if you wanted to, you could punt quarterback. You could end up with, not to say that in redraft leagues, you'd always recommend drafting 2 quarterbacks, but some people have deeper rosters than others. Some people draft, 16, 17. You could do it. I mean, hell, you could grab Aaron Rodgers in the 10th and Kirk Cousins in the 11th, and I think you'd be okay. Again, like you said, it all depends on what you've done earlier in the draft. But yeah, if J.K. Dobbins comes up and now we don't know what's going on with him, he's not practicing, and he's going in the 8th round, and you're like, okay, it's just too good a value to pass up. I have 2 starting running backs, 2 good ones, but I can let him sit for a couple weeks, and now I've got just a juggernaut of a team if he comes back and looks like himself. So yeah, totally reasonable point. Let me ask you we just talked about Sanders. Jalen, and we're talking mostly running backs on this one. Maybe we can another week hit some other positions for sure. I did skip over Waddle. I just didn't want to. We were in a groove with the running backs.
I agree.
with Hurts and Goddard, though, I see you have them on here. How big of a risk are these two guys and really the whole passing game for Philadelphia?
I called them as my breakout team. I think Jalen Hurts has that superstar leap in his range of outcomes, and obviously we're drafting him there at QB6 in positional ADP. But I was looking at the flex fantasy points on a per team basis and the expected fantasy points, which is essentially the air yards, the number of passes, the number of goal line or red zone opportunities for a team, translated to a scale that we all understand. So the top 3 players in expected fantasy points and total fantasy points per game, the Eagles were second to last in total expected fantasy points. So essentially, the pie for the Eagles has been one of the smallest pies in the league. So now you're asking A.J. Brown to eat out of it, and Devonta Smith, and Dallas Goedert, and Jalen Hurts rushing upside. This is where I get concerned about Miles Sanders and really this entire passing game here. I like Dallas Goedert, and the Jalen Hurts Dallas Goedert stack was a killer stack from an advance rate if you look at best ball win rates and stuff like that. But at a certain point, one of these players has to get squeezed. And I know in the past it's been Sanders. The guy just hasn't scored touchdowns. I don't think that's a good reason to entirely fade a player like this. I do think fading a clear-cut third option on a team that can't support it right now might be a way to play it in your one home league.
And that would be Dallas Goedert?
I think that means Dallas Goedert would be the odd man out.
Okay.
I would almost rather bet on Miles Sanders having positive touchdown regression than Dallas Goedert somehow living up to ADP with Devonta Smith and A.J. Brown in town.
I mean, let's be real. The expectation is that Miles Sanders clearly has positive touchdown regression. Like, to give you an example. You know what his rushing touchdown prop is in Vegas?
Is it 6.5?
It's 6.5.
Okay.
So, like, that's still a fine number, right? Like, that's still, it's not reasonable. Anything insane. Mm-hmm. But I mean, Josh Jacobs is 7.5, one up on him, and he scored how many touchdowns last year?
I'm sorry, that's absurd. They're gonna run a committee in Las Vegas. I'm out on Josh Jacobs.
You think 7.5 is too high on touchdowns for Jacobs?
So high. It was way too high.
Okay. But again, all
they're gonna pass. They're gonna pass. They have.
I hear you. I don't have 8 rushing touchdowns. If their offense is better, goal line opportunities.
You also
I guess
got
the
Kenyon
committee
Drake
approach. Yeah.
And Zamir White as well, their new 4th round pick.
Yeah. But like all I'm saying, Sanders has the same rushing touchdown prop as Elijah Mitchell and a few other guys that are DeAndre Swift. Of course, not the same pass catcher, but you get my point. It's not like he has Aaron Jones has the same rushing touchdown prop as Miles Sanders.
Oof. Well, if this offense were to really go pass heavy, I don't know if Miles Sanders would actually get all the snaps because I think they love Kenneth Gainwell in the passing game. Let's see what this offense evolves into. I really don't think they want to play the way that they did last year. It did have success, as you brought up in a previous show, but I think they want to open up this passing game, and if they do, the opportunities for everyone will increase. But man, Miles Sanders is one of those players who, if he gets there with like 9 or 10 touchdowns and he had 250, 300 total opportunities this season, man, that wouldn't be crazy to say at all. But I can't get fully on board.
Look, I don't love Miles Sanders at all. I like that he's going in the late 7th or the 7th round. I have no problem with that. No problem with essentially drafting him as a flex player, as a starting running back on a team that has the best offensive line in the league. I'm okay with that. But no, I'm not excited about him. These are risk reward things. Everyone's draftable at a certain spot. And I think, with an almost 80 ADP, I'm happy to get there. The same way a lot of people feel about Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who had an awful season last year. Good football team. Offensive line retooled is fine. Great quarterback. I get it. Anybody else in the mid rounds you want to hit on?
I think we should mention the the passing game in Arizona and the rushing game in these elite offenses. So you hit the Kansas City Chiefs. In general, a strategy I like to take with mid-round running backs is take one or even two of running backs in uncertain situations on high-flying offenses. So that's the Chiefs this year, either CEH or Ronald Jones, and the Bills this year, Devin Singletary or James Cook. If you're asking me straight up, who do I want? In both situations, it's by far the earlier ADP guy, Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Devin Singletary at their respective ADPs. But in redraft, I will take both players, and I'll sort of mitigate the risk that way. I know that those teams like to pass more often than they run, but they score touchdowns. And we often see changes in year-to-year rushing touchdowns versus passing touchdown percentages just because the nature of the NFL, right? You get to the 1 yard line, you run it in. That's how you end up with that Garrett Blount Patriots 18 touchdown years when Brady had a fantastic season himself.
Even Damian Harris to a large extent last year.
Yeah, perfect point. Same offense. And I think in a weird way, the same principle kind of applies to this Cardinals passing attack because you got a lot of players who I think could be all good at the same time and an offense that wants to pass a ton and score a ton in the division they're in. Zach Ertz, DeAndre Hopkins, Marquise Brown, and Rondale Moore. Yeah. Let's go, Kyler Murray. You don't have that homework clause anymore. They removed it. So you got plenty of time to get ready to pass to all four of these players. And I think especially in Lepre was talking about how certain platforms, you can put suspended players on IR. At an 80-something ADP right now, DeAndre Hopkins is a smash pick. There's almost no risk there. But I actually am taking my chances on all three of these passing options that are healthy: Brown, Rondale Moore, and Zach Ertz at ADP.
I think next week we'll have to talk a little bit more about some of these receivers. There's a lot of them, like Michael Thomas. You got Chris Olave in there. You have Jameis Winston back. Who knows what's going on with Alvin Kamara? You have Jarvis Landry. You have a guy in Thomas who hasn't played in 6 years. But before that, he was far and away the wide receiver one, and it wasn't even close. That was Drew Brees.
Yeah.
Michael Thomas, man, you can't tell me he's not an interesting one where he's being drafted right now, and his stock is rising given that he looks to be on pace to play in week one. 77, 78 ADP right now.
I'll get a piece of that passing attack in fantasy drafts.
Dude, Jameis Winston was a lot more conservative last year before the injury, and definitely lucky in some senses. We talked about that last week. But this is still a guy who has supported many top 20 receivers. And oftentimes he supported 3 top 25 receivers in a season once in Tampa with Evans, Godwin, and I think it was Scotty Miller
or Perryman, maybe.
It wasn't Perryman, no, because Perryman just had that breakout at the end of the year with like the 4-game stretch. It
was the slot receiver who ended up going to the Titans and Washington. Yeah, his name's on the tip of my tongue.
Either way, you get what I'm saying here.
Yes.
It's just, he can do it. He can make it happen.
Adam Humphries?
It was Humphries. Yes. Adam Humphries. Thank you. I think he was 26, but still 3.
Yeah, he got paid.
And one of them was Adam Humphries. So I don't know. Ton of risk with Michael Thomas. But there's that part of me that's like, yeah, lots of risk for sure. But this guy, when he was healthy, was, the best receiver in the National Football League.
Yeah, that's the kind of risk I'll go for, right? Risk needs to be paired with the same level of reward. Number 1 overall wide receiver sounds like a decent reward to me in the mid rounds.
All right. Late rounds, not a ton to talk about here because it's late rounds. You're not really taking risks. In my opinion, you're throwing darts and hoping to make, educated decisions to where if you hit even 1 or 2 of those guys, you're in business. I'm going to give you one, and it is topical, Matt. Julio Jones. Where do you think he's going to settle into? What round?
What round?
PPR.
Ninth round, 10th
Okay.
round. He went in the 5th round last year, 4th, 5th round last year in Tennessee.
Yep.
Now
A lot
he's
different.
yeah, a lot different situation. Russell Gage is not going away. Godwin, positive news that he doesn't start on the PUP list. Mike Evans, obviously the clear number one option here. Bottom line, we talked about team expected fantasy points being a negative for the Philadelphia Eagles. Oh boy, is it a positive for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. If you're going to be a 4th receiving option on any team, you want to be the 4th receiving option on Tom Brady's offense. It really is that simple. He was in the midst of supporting 4 legitimate, basically number ones at their position in Antonio Brown, Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, and Rob Gronkowski last year. I think he could do it again with Julio, obviously being 4th of that group, maybe 3rd. But that is a very fruitful position in a healthy Tampa Bay.
Okay, so let's just assume we're talking like 10th round for Julio. Last year, I was beating the drum hard for Julio at his ADP was wrong on that, obviously, but for Antonio Brown. And I don't really think I was wrong about that. Maybe I should have put in a stipulation that he might go crazy again. But Antonio Brown in the games that he played was really good. He was 7th, 8th round pick, depending on where you're drafting. Underdog, he started to come up. In your home leagues, Antonio Brown was probably around an 8th round pick. In those games that he was playing, you were getting way better than 8th round value for, not even close, way better than 8th round value for Antonio Brown. The reason I mentioned Antonio Brown in the same conversation as Julio Jones isn't just because these are the 2 best receivers in the last decade. They are, right? In the last decade, body of work.
Yeah, I mean, Calvin technically played the beginning of this, but yes.
Yeah, I knew you were going to say Calvin, and I'm glad you caught that. But you know what I mean. Like, really, yes. The whole past 10 years, Julio Jones and Antonio Brown, they're the guys. Antonio Brown had a stretch where he was the wide receiver 1 or 2 for like 4 straight years. You know how hard that is to do? Julio was a wide receiver 6 or better in 7 straight years. Point is, Antonio Brown is 8 months older than Julio Jones. 7-8 months older than Julio Jones. He was 33 in Tampa last year. Julio Jones is 33 now. He won't be 34 till after the season's over. If he stays healthy, and I have no idea whether or not he does, he's going to be good. I'm telling you that. And there's going to be people that scoff at me for that. I can't tell you if he's going to stay healthy. That's a decision you have to make on your own. I can tell you that if Julio Jones is healthy and Tom Brady's throwing him the ball and you have all of those other weapons around him taking off the pressure, Julio Jones will still produce 9th, 10th round value. I can guarantee that much. Can't guarantee he's going to be healthy, though.
I got nothing to add. I completely agree. I'm in.
It's just you have to love this guy a little bit,
I'm happy to be wrong on a player like this, right?
Sure.
And he's going to go I think he's going to creep up in a couple rounds of ADP, but I don't think he's going to go crazy. I don't think it's going to be a 6th, 7th round pick for him. Assuming it's not that, happy to take a chance on a player who, by the way, he has an incentive-laden contract where they want him to get to 80 receptions, 800 yards, and fulfill that contract. I'd be thrilled with that. If he had 80 for 800, he probably has 10 touchdowns as well. Classically never getting in the end zone. That can turn around when you're playing with Brady.
I forgot the Antonio Brown debacle was week 17 last year.
Yeah, he already had a season of it.
I thought it was earlier in the year, but I forgot Brown missed a bunch of games.
Mm-hmm.
Brown missed, a bunch of games. He had some really good games. He played, I'm not including this Jets game, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games. 3 of them were 100-yard performances. He had touchdowns in 3 of 6. He had 7.
And that was on a bum ankle. Like, that ankle was hurt for sure.
For sure. He had 10 plus receptions or 7 plus receptions in 4 of 6. But again, he was injured, so he lost some time. remember whenever Antonio Brown came back though, when he after he come back from like a 1-game hiatus, a few games, they kept play Antonio Brown. It wasn't a question of whether or not to play him.
I would argue to say that this isn't really the same kind of risk at all. The risk is already baked into the ADP for Julio Jones. It's literally, if he's healthy, he's playable in fantasy football.
Yep.
That is rare for his draft position. You know, it can change a few rounds and that can still be true. This is kind of a no-brainer for me.
Yeah. People disagree with it, but my God, what if you get another season out of Julio Jones? All right, give me one more before we wrap this one up. And appreciate Phil, as always, for producing this one.
Yeah, thanks for keeping us honest, producer Phil. I got to say, in the late rounds, risk is barely a factor, right? Everyone's risky. The expected fantasy points are very low. But I do get more and more concerned about these veterans that we don't hear anything about. That's Will Fuller for sure. We just have not heard a word about him. Got hit with the PED suspension, the finger breaking, and now he can't, not even a tryout. Very concerned about that, to the point where I might just totally be out. I'm not quite as out on Odell Beckham because of the positivity surrounding the fact that he kind of needed another surgery, it sounded like. And yes, it sucks that the ACL tore. It sucks that it happened in the Super Bowl. Jarring for sure, but it sounds like from a medical standpoint, they actually really needed to get back in there, clean it up, and they were very pleased with how the surgery and so far the recovery has gone. I still think we could get some solid production from Odell Beckham second half of the season once again.
As always, we appreciate you guys listening. This is a fun one, man. Risky players. There's a lot of money to be made if you can make the right decisions there. DFS, best ball, fantasy football, sports betting, whatever it is. Follow Matt at Draftaholic on the Twitters, me at Loughy_D, LOUGHY_D. And check out everything else we got going on at the Stokastic Fantasy Football channel on YouTube and the Best Ball channel. We got it all happening over there. Matt, we'll see you back here next week, man.
See ya.